IVM. Hello, Khushamadid. I'm Mahrukh Inayat. Today's podcast is very special to me. On the show today, I have a renowned journalist, author of several highly acclaimed books, and the writer of a soon-to-be-released film, Shikara, the untold story of Kashmiri Pandits. And the writer with me is Rahul Pandita. Welcome to The Note, Rahul.
Thank you, Mahrukh.
You know, Rahul, I've been following you for the longest time. You're somebody I look up to, your work, your interviews, and now following your timeline, I know, being a Kashmiri myself, I know this is a very, very emotional time for you. I'm a Kashmiri Muslim, and I want to start off by saying that I openly acknowledge what happened to all Kashmiri Pandits was a heinous crime. And the only solution is their respectable return to the valley. And I underline the word respectable. I'm going to start on that note, and I'm going to ask you first, Rahul, why did you write Shikara?
Mahrukh, I wrote a book on my personal experiences of Exodus as a 14-year-old boy and the aftermath of Exodus. When we lost everything that we had gathered with a lot of hard work in Kashmir. And in a matter of few weeks, we lost everything and we became refugees in this country. That book was a memoir called Our Moon Has Blood Clots, and it came out in 2013, 7 years ago. Now, I remember when I was working on multiple drafts of that book, and I was living and reliving those moments in 88, 89, 90. But when you're writing a book, you're writing it in a certain delirium. You know, you're going through it very surgically. But I remember in the January of 2013, when the first advanced copy came into my hand, and I opened my own book, and I started reading what I had already gone through in multiple drafts, maybe 100 times. I just could not go beyond few pages. I just threw it away. Till date, it's been 7 years. I have not been able to read that book myself. It leaves a lot of scars, and it takes a toll on you. But I was also aware of the fact of the limitations of literature in this country. The book has done well, but a few 100,000 people, it does not suffice. So I thought it was very important for us to tell this story through popular culture. And what best than telling the story through cinema? Because, cinema and cricket are two big religions of this country. So we thought we must say this story. And thankfully, I got a willing partner in Vidhu Vinod Chopra, who is of Kashmiri origin. And he said that he'd been wanting to tell this for a very, very long time. So we met several years ago. It took a lot of time, but finally it's out.
I was reading a recent piece that you wrote when you say that you were 14 and you had to get this blanket from one of BJP functionaries who was giving it out to everyone, who was distributing it. I mean, the humiliation of doing that must have been so great that I can't even imagine what it must have felt like. What did you bring of your personal journey into Shikara? Were there instances like this that you have added to the narrative, or has it been a larger, broad stroke kind of narrative that you have pulled through?
So when I started working on this film, I had a very clear brief from Vinod. He said that it has to be a love story in the face of terrible adversity. That is the brief I started working on, and it has to be set in the backdrop of 89-90. And since the protagonists of this film are both Kashmiri Pandits and, Shiv and Shanti and Shiv Kumar Dhar. So that was the brief I began with. But obviously, I had reported a lot on Kashmir and I had personally gone through that crisis. So some of the events I have described in my book have found their way into this film, surely. But it's not based on my book. It's a completely different story. But we have used some elements. Some elements are crucial. For example, if you see that, you must have seen that particular shot in trailer where a group of Kashmiri Pandits is seen running after a truckload of tomatoes in a refugee camp in Jammu. Yes. That is how my book starts, right? So, yes. So a lot of elements from the book, but a completely different story.
I've heard and read what Vidhu Vinod Chopra has said. He says it's a film for healing. But a section of the social media has been up in arms. Many Kashmiri Pandits themselves have said that don't ridicule what happened to Kashmiri Pandits. Do you believe that it is time to move on?
See, when we started working on the film, and when the first draft was made and the final draft was made, Vinod and I were having a chat, and I told him that Vinod, I think this film should do to Kashmir what your previous film, Lage Raho Munna Bhai, did to Gandhiji. We want to start a conversation. Frankly, beyond a point, any government which comes into this country cannot do more than a certain thing. But things will only start changing when there will be a people-to-people contact. Now, you heard a lot of criticism on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter. It comes from people who have not seen this film. Let me assure them through your podcast today, Mahrukh. The problem is that the story of Kashmiri Pandits has been relegated to margins for the last 30 years. My people are very skeptical about how their story will be presented. So I want to tell them that there's absolutely no compromise we have made to their story in this film. But having said that, it's a healing film because we want to start a conversation around this film. We want to say, there was a little controversy recently which started a backlash on Twitter where Vinod appeared with me on a TV channel, and he said that we should say sorry to each other and move on. What he meant was, a victim cannot say sorry to a terrorist. A victim of ethnic cleansing can say sorry to somebody else who may have gone through some similar crisis in Kashmir. Kashmir Valley has also waded through several patches of darkness. That is what he meant. We can hug each other. Victim can hug someone in Kashmir who will say sorry and say, look, you were my neighbor. I did not take part in your killing or ethnic cleansing, but I did not do enough. Please forgive me. That is how a conversation starts, and that is what Vinod meant. In no uncertain terms, there cannot be any compromise between a victim and a terrorist.
Having said that, you also spoke about, there was this particular hashtag that said, sorry Kashmiri Pandits, right? I want to know, who do you want this apology from? I'm ready to apologize. I was 12 when this happened. I'm ashamed of this. Who do you want this apology from? Not just you, but the entire community.
I think the apology should come from certain quarters. That is what Vinod said in the special preview of the film in Delhi on 19 January 1990, the day which marks the 30th anniversary of our exodus. When we talk to people in the rest of India, they have absolutely no idea or very little idea about what happened to Kashmiri Pandits in 1990. This is what a man says in the film. You must have seen that shot in the trailer also. When we left Kashmir and came to Jammu, we had a certain idea about how the rest of India will rise up to the occasion and protest. There's a man who says in the film, Parliament mein shor machega. But we know now after 30 years that Parliament mein koi shor nahi macha. So the apology which Vinod was talking about should come from the rest of India. It should also come from Kashmiri Muslims. I know you are young, and there are not every Kashmiri Muslim has taken part in violence against Pandits. Fair enough. I also said in a Hindustan Times piece that we don't need an apology from people who were born after 1990 and had no role to play in this. We cannot keep on doing this. What about Kashmiri Pandits? What about Kashmiri Pandits? I'm not the one advocating that. But the problem is that a majority of people still, as we speak today in Kashmir, are absolutely in denial about the circumstances that led to the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits. I think after this film is out and when a conversation starts, and we are already seeing some of it happening on Twitter in the last few days, especially ever since I came on Ravish's show, because Ravish is a very popular figure and his show is watched by millions across this country. I'm really overwhelmed by some of the responses I have personally received from Kashmiri Muslims and from Muslims from the other part of country, and from Hindus and from other religions, where people have said sorry. So our idea is that let a conversation start. Let the Kashmiri Pandits also feel that there are a lot of people in this country who feel sorry for them. That is how a conversation will start, and that is how the actual healing will begin.
Vinod Chopra mentioned that a large number of Kashmiri Muslims were also involved in the making of the film. And I can imagine that given that most of it has been shot in the valley, or a large part of it. What was their reaction to the story? Also, your lead star cast also happens to be Muslim. Was that deliberate? Were you trying to set a narrative right from the very beginning?
I don't know what was going on in VC's mind, frankly, but to the best of my knowledge, I don't think it was deliberate. I think we went through a lot of. I mean, VC went through a lot of cast. I had no say in casting, etc. I was involved in the film as a co-writer, but to the best of my knowledge, it was not deliberate. And of course, when we were shooting this film in Kashmir, there were a lot of young Kashmiri Muslims who were involved in the making of this film. They're all professionals. They knew exactly what we were doing. There are also young Kashmiri Pandits who were born after 1990 or who were very young in 1990 when it happened. Some of them were born in refugee camps. But there was absolute cooperation from both sides. And I know for sure that Kashmiri Hindus who have worked as assistant directors on this film, and Kashmiri Muslims who have worked as assistant directors on the film and in other capacities, they are very close friends. They meet in Mumbai. I see their pictures every second day on Instagram.
Another thing that you said, and there was a video of yours also, which got a lot of others to also come in with a hashtag that said, "Hum wapas aayenge." What more is needed, Rahul? At a national level, at a local level in the valley, what are the things that you endeavor to achieve? I know this is a film. This can create a certain understanding, but at a affirmative level, at an actionable level, what is your dream to achieve?
I think my dream to achieve is first, I keep on saying this, that the reconciliation between Kashmiri Muslims and Kashmiri Pandits is a two-step process. The first process is the acknowledgement of our pain and the acknowledgement that the majority community in Kashmir failed us in the January of 1990. Some willingly, some unwillingly, but that is what happened. So first of all, this acceptance, like I said, there's a very big denial about the circumstances that led to exodus. That is one. And then at the end of it, the problem in this country is that there's absolutely no sense of justice or closure. So this process, step 2 in this process would be, because more than 700 Kashmiri Pandits have been killed brutally in Kashmir Valley. Not in a single incident, in a single case has there been any conviction. So we tell the government today that, okay, the return of Kashmiri Pandits may be a long process, because the situation is bad in Kashmir. You need to identify a lot of things. You need to make sure that security, etc., is in place. But what is stopping you from beginning the wheels of justice? We know very clearly, at least, as a symbolic measure, people like Bitta Karate, Elias Farooq Ahmad Dar, who has on national television accepted the fact that he was responsible for the killing of more than 20 Kashmiri Pandits. He's in jail today, but he's not in jail for the murder of these 20 or more Kashmiri Pandits. He is in jail in a money laundering case, in a terror funding case. We want the government to make sure that some of these perpetrators of crime in 1990 are brought to justice in the murder of Kashmiri Pandits. So at least we get a sense of closure, which will pave the way for the reconciliation with the majority community who had no role whatsoever to play in this ethnic cleansing.
Rahul Pandita, I know this must have been tough. I know this entire journey of writing the film, co-writing this film, and now as it inches towards its release, I know how tough it has been, or it must have been. I can only empathize. I just want to say, I hope you're able to achieve the closure and a reconciliation of the kind that every Kashmiri Pandit wants. Thank you so much for speaking with me. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts in a very candid manner. And as a Kashmiri Muslim, I say that I hope that all of you return to the valley in the most respectable manner. Thank you so much for speaking with me.
Thank you, Mahrukh. It means a lot.
Hi, I'm Sarayu Natarajan.
And I'm Alok Prasanna Kumar.
And we are the hosts of the Ganatantra podcast.
On this podcast, we speak to academics, social scientists, journalists, and activists to find out what's actually going on in Indian politics.
On this podcast, we stay away from personality politics, intrigue, and gossip, and instead focus on the data, research, and analysis that drives all this.
So tune in to the Ganatantra podcast, where new episodes are out every Wednesday on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Do you wish you were smarter? Well, so do we. But the next best thing?
We could make you sound smarter.
And to help you with this endeavor, we are Simplified, a podcast that attempts to break down the complex world around you with a little knowledge, a lot of poor jokes, and a ton of random trivia.
Episodes out every Monday.
On the IVM Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts.
See ya!